Hello, everyone. It is Friday, May the 24th, and it's the feast day of Blessed Louis Zephyrin Moreau. He's actually the founder. He helped to establish the forerunners of today's mutual societies and credit unions. He died in Hyacinthe, Quebec, here in Canada. Okay, to the first reading. We continue. We're almost near the end of the Epistle of James, and again, it's very it's pithy kind of but dynamic advice. Beloved, do not grumble against one another, so that you may not be judged. See, the judge is standing at the doors. In other words, there's a fine line between you and death. So if you don't establish the habits now of not grumbling, what's to say you're going to change automatically at the end of your life? We have these silly, stupid ideas of deathbed confessions, and they happen once in a while, but they're very rare. The point is that habits, if we settle for habits, and they're bad habits, they become vices, and they're very hard to root out. Yes, God is always desiring salvation of his children, and Jesus is interceding for us, but this requires a cooperation on our will, notwithstanding, some extraordinary grace that I know from experience, 36 years of experience, is statistically rare. It usually requires that we form good habits, virtues, and really strive, we are open to grace. So do not grumble against one another. This grumbling is not just, that person just so ticks me off. And that happens to all of us. But grumbling goes even worse. It sort of begins to judge somebody, their character, their state of soul, and so on. These are the kind of things that we have to do everything, marshal all of the spiritual arsenal at our disposal, and resist this. And if we do fall into it, make acts of contrition, repentance, and begin again. And pray that other people don't do that to us when we're not around. Lots of other good stuff in this very short. It's only 3 verses, but it's 3 packed verses. Okay, over to the gospel. This is from St. Mark. Pharisees are at it again. Some Pharisees came to test him and ask, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" Jesus answered them, "What did Moses command you?" They said, "Moses allowed a man to write a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her." But Jesus said to them, "That's because you were so hard of heart, you and your ancestors. Because you were hard of heart. You were like Pharaoh." It's a real upbraid. "But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one. Therefore, what God has joined, not two people, not the state, but what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Let no one separate." So this challenges our divorce culture. Divorce is an ugly thing. Everybody who gets a divorce knows this, experiences this. So nobody who gets a divorce says it's a good thing. But the church has to repeat the teaching of Jesus, that people just hear the church say, well, if you're divorced, you're living in sin. No, not really. Not necessarily. There's a whole series of circumstances that require a person to actually incur the guilt of sin. Did they cause the divorce because of infidelity? Or because they ignored their spouse and they never got off their butts and tried to pay attention to them? Oh, there's all sorts of things. You know that. Anybody who watches this, I know it from my pastoral experience. And even then, if somebody divorces an individual, are they in sin? Not necessarily, because that would require them taking up with somebody else and being in a second relationship while they're still married in the eyes of God. Now, this is why the church expends so much of her energies and, frankly, of the monies she collects and invests in the marriage tribunals in order to assist and help couples who have gone through a divorce or are split up and would like to get married again in the future, to help them ascertain whether or not the first exchange of consent was valid. Because if it's valid, it's valid. They can do nothing about it because God has brought this bond into existence. Not man, not any human being, not even the bride and the spouse, or the bride and the groom. Although they've had to mouth the words, it's God who seals them together through the grace of the sacrament. So if it's valid, there's nothing that anyone can do. So for people to expect the church to authorize divorce is insane. Complete lack of understanding or an unwillingness to understand the very nature of marriage. And if it is a valid exchange of consent, then what are we saying if we break that and then go with somebody else and do a valid exchange of consent with them? Well, the first exchange of consent is still valid. What are we saying about ourselves? What are we saying about the impact or the validity or the reality of words? Like, there's a whole series of things that most people are not willing to deal with because we want what we want, or we're hurt or in pain, all these things. But if we don't think about these things, then we just make reactionary decisions. And then the church is seen as some ogre, some antiquated, pre-medieval reality, that is only, out to prevent people from being happy. And the opposite is the case. So the Lord was not in any way adverse to being truthful, right? This is not an easy question. Even in his society, they're all religious. They're all Jews. They're all supposedly going to synagogue, and yet they're asking him. So this is how corrosive, divorce is. Even back then, it's even worse now with no-fault divorce. But Jesus answers us with the truth, and we all have to wrestle with it. So ask him, and may not be an issue with you. Most people perhaps who watch this kind of thing, it won't be an issue. But you may know somebody that it's a real issue or they're really suffering. And we have to journey with them, we have to accompany them, but we have to be truthful with them. We cannot lie to people or just make them feel good. God bless you.